Yeah, sorry about that. I think I got it. The first one, the first link wasn't working. So,
Okay. All right.
but
Well, we
good.
made it.
I'm glad I'm in now.
I'm glad you're in. Glad you made it.
Uh,
So we have a great group of people that we started off with yesterday, and then we're going for just this last session for today, and then we'll have one more day tomorrow. And they're asking lots of good questions. So we're looking forward to hearing your opening remarks.
okay, let me see if I can share my charts here. So let me know.
Okay.
Nope, that's not.
We've had some technical difficulties this afternoon. Okay.
Sorry, Walt.
That's all right.
Now program managers are. So let me try again.
Okay.
Okay, can you guys see that?
Not yet.
Well, you have them. I might just because I'm obviously having problems.
Let me see if I can bring them up. Hang on. There we go.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. Okay, so let me just start out by hopefully everybody can see this. What I always tell people, I think that my favorite part of my job is being able to solve big problems. And if you're not, when you look at every single one of these pictures on this slide, there were big problems that either that we had to overcome to accomplish the picture, or there's going to be big problems for us to make that picture a reality, right? And so I think just think about that as we're going forward, because I think that this is a major thing that for each of you, you need to think about what is it about you that helps you be able to help in solving big problems. Because if through your career, your ability to solve and be able to get teams together to solve big problems is going to help your leadership journey. Okay, well, can you move the next slide? Luckily, me being good at teams was not a prerequisite.
Understand.
So the other thing too is, through my career, and I'm feeling everybody keeps talking to me about my career, and so I think one of the things that I realize is that I feel old now, but I think what's been fun about my career is I've been able to work in a bunch of different environments and with different kinds of models. Showed up, started my career out at White Sands, which is a very test environment, but we had to learn to change the culture out there to be able to then go from this testing MacGyver environment to being very structured and able to repair flight hardware. That was a big change in how to go be able to overcome that environment and that culture change to be able to do the job. So a big change. Then went and started working in station. At the time for station, it was a big change for us to really go figure out how to first work with international partners and what we had to do to establish and work in different environments and learn that people can do things differently and still do them well. That was a big challenge for us. And then probably the last hurdle, which has been there for the last, 12, 13 years of my career is even expanding that even further and saying, can we have new kinds of relationships with industry and how they do things? And so there's a lot of things in there about listening, understanding that there's lots of different ways to do things, just like we talked about with international partners. And they had different ways to do things. Different parts of industry have different ways to do things. And it's through us really kind of being able to glean and be open to different ways of doing things that then really kind of open up the aperture on how we can solve big problems. Next slide. So, when I started working in the commercial area, in 2008, when we awarded the CRS contracts, the commercial resupply contracts for cargo to ISS, the providers that were signed up to do that contract really were at pretty close to ground zero. At the time, we awarded contracts to people that didn't have launch pads built yet, didn't even have launch vehicles that were operating in the class that we wanted to use them. And we were at the very beginning of our cycle for building the spacecraft. And we had to get over this big hurdle to then go take companies that had done different parts of the job, but then to kind of grow them up to be able to understand how to go build and deliver spacecraft to the International Space Station that were delivering cargo back and forth. Through that relationship, then we really began to go understand, okay, how do we go take that and what we built there and then step it up even a higher level to be able to do crew? And I'll tell you, it was not easy. It wasn't easy for the NASA side and it wasn't easy for the crew side. And we really had to do pretty much everything from the very beginning very differently. We had to have our requirements set structured differently from a NASA perspective. We had to think about how do we work with our partners in a way that we understand that our total relationship with them needs to be different. If you notice, I didn't use the term contractor. Even that is part of us doing things differently. We had a huge debate within the agency about calling them contractors or not. And it was very important for us from a commercial crew standpoint and a TO at the time to use that term partner, because sometimes words do matter, right? Words can change the relationship and how you work together. And if you're working with a partner or a provider, that means that it's somebody that can equally come to the table with solutions. And when you have two people working on a solution, or in this case, when we have Boeing, SpaceX, and NASA all working on how do we get crew to the station, and you have being created in a format where you're treating each other as equals, that opens up the solution space, right? You are showing yourself that you're open to hearing them as an equal and having that conversation as equal. Kind of a subtle change, but a very, very important change, and it was actually very hard to do that. So just think about how you can do that in any of your relationships. Are you treating other parts of the center or your other teammates that like they're equals or not? If they are can be part of the solution and able to come and work with you on equal footing, you actually may open up the conversation on your solution space to have it be a wider area. It's not you telling them what to do. It's you saying, this is in my experience what we typically have done. What do you think we should do? Or what is your experience base? And it ends up being a multiplier relationship rather than you having all the answers. Next slide. So we've got some big problems. I tell everybody we've got some big problems going forward, and I need to be able to tap everybody out there to be able to come up with solution space. And I treat anybody that can come to the table with the solution as my partner, right? And and I will listen to anybody that's got a good idea on things, because when you're talking about doing things like going to the lunar surface and putting a lunar orbiting platform out there, and I know how hard it is to live and work and fly in space 365 days a year, doing it for 20 years. You know it's hard enough from a Leo perspective. And so we are all going to have to be open and listening to ourselves and working together to be able to move forward and be able to accomplish the things that we have to do going forward. And flexibility is key, right? Because if you look at just the different opportunities there, I'll just talk about the human landing system. You know, right now, the team that's working human landing system, the NASA team that's working that, they are right now working with 3 different solutions, working to go tailor NASA standards on 3 totally different solutions. And when you look at that solution space up there, just the fact that we are treating people like a partner shows how much the solution space has grown. I mean, when we looked at, originally NASA looked at just their concept did not look like any of these. So not only do we have these 3 sets in trades and be able to understand this, but then we also have what our NASA planning teams were thinking too. And just think about what that does to kind of open up opportunities out there. But that it takes having a team that can listen, that's technically very proficient, that's flexible and open, and knows but also knows kind of what's important, right? And so huge challenge to be able to have a workforce that can be able to do that, to be able to operate in partnerships that can be able to do that, and then be working towards missions that are maybe very different in the future. Next slide. So, you know, I've been talking a lot about treating somebody like a partner. Just because people are partners doesn't mean we always agree. And and everybody, you know, in the commercial crew program, when I was a program manager and I started the program, one of the things that I decided was that I wanted to be able to pull on the best people across the agency to be able to conduct this program. But what that did for me was it meant that I was dealing with 3 different centers and JSC, KSC, and Marshall. And I was dealing with 3 different center directors and 3 different engineering directors and 3 different SMA directors. And so that was a trade-off that I made. I sold to Robert Lightfoot at the time when he was the AA and said, I want to kind of be an agnostic of the center and be able to go and pull on where Marshall skills are really critical and where JSC skills are really critical and KSC skills are. And we were the first, and there was a lot of things that we did that we were the first. Like I was the first to be able to have a supervisor at one center sign off time cards. You would have thought that that's almost like, you know, a miracle. Sign off time cards at another center. We tackled the travel system. We tackled cross-center. We kind of laid the groundwork for cross-center supervisory capabilities within the agency. But I will tell you that did not make things, in some cases, it did not make things easier. But when you looked at the benefit that we had for it, it was huge for me as a program. Now, what that did force me to have to do was to have very close relationships with all those center directors, right? And it wasn't that these center directors all agreed with me, right? And it wasn't that those center directors, there was a lot of times that I was herding cats and keeping people together to be able to get it going. But those additional relationships and the work that had to go into keeping those relationships aligned honestly enabled us to be able to conduct the missions that we had with the skills we had. Sometimes the right way is not the easiest way. So we just think about that as you're going forward, that it's those relationships that kind of hold things together, and you and how you are with everybody, and that they can trust you and be able to have hard conversations with you is what's going to enable them to buy into things that normally they would not have bought into for the long term. Next slide. I'm hoping. So, you know, what's going to be really, really key is the things that I've already talked about. It's one of the things that helped me was you really have to tee yourself up for what are the problems you want to go work through, and then making sure that you've got timelines and understanding for when you're kind of looking ahead for the kinds of problems you had. Like, so for example, when you go and decide you're going to go pull people from 3 different centers, don't assume it's going to be smooth sailing. Assume that you're going to have to be spending some time to go out there and be able to line people up and spend the time to be able to make sure that problems are getting resolved along the way. It's also important, I've been trained by Bill Gerstenmaier, and one of the things he always said was you make sure that you make the decision at the right time. Not necessarily timely, but that you know when's the right time to make a decision. When you need to close the trade space, right? It's very, very important to know when you kind of maximize the ability to get the data that's going to be relevant to that decision, and then you make the decision and move on. It may mean that at a future time you have to go say, oh, there's new data on the table and I might need to relook at that decision, but you have to become very, very strategic in lining up your decisions and what you feel like is the right data to have the decision, and making the timing of your decision a very strategic aspect of the decision-making process. Very important, especially as you're teeing up big decisions, that you kind of think about that along the way. Just making a decision, people go, I just want you to make a decision. It's like, if you haven't really thought about why that's the right time to make a decision, that may not be the right time. Next slide. So I wanted to leave some time for, I'm sorry I was late, so I am, Walt, I know you guys are on a schedule too, so I'm probably able to carve out another 10-15 minutes at the end to give you the full time, or I'll let you decide.
Okay. That sounds great. That sounds great, because I know we have a lot of questions and that the group has logged in here. So let me start. The first 2 questions are actually very similar. So the first one was like, Artemis has a lot of schedule pressure to make 2024. How are you dealing with that? And the next question are, what challenges need to be overcome to meet our 2024 human landing goal? They're kind of both related.
So I'll tell you, I don't really think about the time. I mean, I think I think when you put the date out there, it's about knowing that it's important to get there quick, right? I'll tell you, when I started cargo, the goal was to have cargo by the end of 2010. And we ended up flying the first mission April 2011. And, I had to go talk to Gerst a couple of times about getting additional shuttle missions so that we could be able to go do that. 2024, we're working, the team right now is hammering away, working through getting their milestones ready, and they're hitting every single milestone. But when we go and we end up awarding in the spring time frame, we'll go look at all the work that needs to get done, and then we'll go figure out when we feel is the right time to go get that done. I would love it if it was the end of 2024. But I think the thing that surprised me the most coming into this job was when I came in, everybody was talking about Artemis 3, but I told the team, I said, hey, we're not going to do Artemis 3 until we do Artemis 1 and 2. So where's the schedules for Artemis 1 and 2? And let's go tackle those first. Every journey starts with your first step, right? So you just got to make sure that you're laying out all the work and you're making sure that you got a plan through the work. So I feel really good right now. I think we have a great Artemis 1 plan. All the hardware is getting ready to come down. Last piece is the core stage, and we'll make sure that the core stage works, and there'll be one more thing that we check off. But no development project, if you ever start at the end with a development project, you're in a world of hurt. You got to start with, how do I break off the pieces as I'm going through and get there as quick as possible, right? That's the goal.
Yep. Very good. Next question is, what was the most creative solution your team has had to solve? How did you motivate your team to come up with the solution?
So a year before we flew Demo 2, we had a pretty major failure as we were doing static fire for our IFAT. For our in-flight abort. In fact, it was so, like, the vehicle was gone in 1 second. I mean, it was just stunning, right? And the team, honestly, we just flown Demo 1. The team, that vehicle had, operated beautifully, and we were getting ready to turn it around, and we're just, everybody's going full steam ahead, and we had this major failure. And the first thing you have to do is to get everybody to, you never make a good decision when you're super stressed. The most important thing that a boss can do sometimes is give people time and the space to relax